Hermes Voyage, Log 1.
Hello there, whoever might be hearing this entry. Now that I think about it, I have no reason to record this, nor should I. However, it might help me keep whatever semblance of sanity I might still have. My name is Jonathan Dowers, and I'm the last surviving member of the Hermes Voyage, at least as far as I know. To put it simply, I have no clue where the rest of the crew has gone. If my memory serves me right, there were 12 of us when we set off. The 12 best and brightest that the United States could offer. Well, 11 of the best and brightest. I was simply at the right place and at the right time. My father, who had been a well-respected researcher and scientist for the United States government, and I never got along, nor shared any similarities. But he still cared enough about me to get me a job pushing papers in offices I had no business being in. My apologies. I guess I should talk about the voyage. Again, I'm not necessarily a valued member of the crew, so my knowledge of what's really going on is slim to none. The very rushed briefing I was given before setting foot on this ugly hunk of metal went something like this. The Hermes Voyage is an important experimental research mission, making use of what seems to me futuristic technologies. Again, they didn't really feel the need to explain what this mission was or why it was so important. All I knew was that my father is the person to blame for me being on this ship. Since this is just an audio recording, I guess it would be nice to carve out the details of the ship. I didn't get to see all that much of the exterior, but what I did see was odd. I've been around spaceships and aircraft my whole life, but this ship. I'm no expert on physics, but I'm not dumb enough to think that this level of tech is possible at this time. It doesn't even seem human. The damn thing had no wings, no windows, or any form of propulsion known to me. Just a bunch of doodads and nonsense attached to some cubes, like what a child would make with Legos. The inside, the same inhuman feeling. I was very informally taught about the basics of zero gravity, the best way to move around and not damage anything. However, there is gravity inside. I'm unsure if it's artificial or just plain old regular gravity. And along the walls I can see buttons and panels, screens that I have no idea how to use or even read, along with some more recognizable computer interfaces, like the one I'm recording this log on. There's 5 main rooms, I guess you would call them, and 2 maintenance closets. I don't know. I was instructed to strictly stay in this room no matter what. However, I broke that instruction right before recording this. Some details are still rattling around in my head at the moment, but when I woke up, I guess I had this instinct to look around, to check on my crewmates. And I've scoured just about everywhere I can think of in this place, with no one in sight. As far as I know, I'm just the dumb paper pusher who overslept while everyone else left. The issue is, I can't find a way out. There's a hatch in one of the maintenance closets that I came in from, but it's locked. I guess I'll just sit around and wait. I'm sure the crew will have a laugh at me when they show back up.
Hermes Voyage, Log 2.
Well, hello again. I wish I knew how to start these things. It's been about a day since my last entry. After the unbearable weight of cringe from listening back to my own voice, I waited for what I can assume was a couple of hours. The interface I record these logs on has a clock. It's in that stuck-up military timing, but I can tell when a number goes up. So, after waiting for some time and not hearing a sound from the others, I inevitably got bored and, honestly, a bit claustrophobic. I know it sounds dumb, an entire ship to myself with plenty of space, but there's just something that doesn't sit well with me here. Maybe it's all of the lights and screens I can't possibly understand the meaning of, or the silence. It's quiet. The only sounds being the occasional whir of machines or beeps and boops. Aside from that, I did some exploring. If I was going to stick around here by myself, I might as well do it comfortably. I found what little cushioning I could, and some spare blankets to build myself a little cozy cot near the computer. Strangely, there's still a lot of stuff lying around. I like to think of myself as a gentleman, so I didn't snoop into the other crewmates' belongings, but there were a lot of personal effects still in the room. Papers, folders, books, and some devices. I guess they'd be the equivalent to like a tablet or phone, but just like the ship's construction, they feel just a little too advanced. I can't lie. And if I'm being honest, I don't feel the need to. I don't like this. Not one bit. I'm aware that I'm not viewed as a valuable asset to this mission, but if these guys show up and expect me to take this all as a joke, well, I'd say that these nerds have a rather cruel sense of humor. I've never dealt well with isolation. It's just not something I'm comfortable with. I don't think many people would disagree with that sentiment. I'll try my best not to treat these logs as my little diary to talk about my feelings, although there really isn't much else to talk about. I brought along some books and music for entertainment, so I guess I'll just indulge in that until something interesting happens.
Hermes Voyage, Log 3.
Is this thing working? I guess so. Well, it's been, I guess, a few days now. I'm sorry for what is inevitably going to be a vent about my situation. I tried my best not to sit down and record every second of these past few days. It just feels wrong. No one is here to hear these. As far as I know, these recordings aren't sent anywhere. They're just stored on the computer. There's been no sign of the crew, and despite my arguably rude intrusions into the other rooms for anything new, I've learned little more than what I knew the last time I made a log. But a little more is still more. I can now say, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was placed on this mission because of my father. He passed at the beginning of this year, and while he always stated that he was proud that I worked with him, I knew deep down he resented my failures. I scored above average in school, did well in sports. Hell, I went to college and got a business degree. But was I a fancy scientist or doctor? No. The reason I'm sure of his involvement lies within my roommate's belongings. I never cared for the guy, so my hesitance to snoop didn't really stop me from looking through some of his stuff. Turns out he was a lead researcher on this mission. What he was specifically researching is beyond me. But the rather kind note from my father, asking him to consider bringing me aboard the mission, left little to question. The guy's name is Dr. Isaac Hankins, and from what I remember, he was pretty close with my dad. I have little experience with him personally, but he was far more accepting of me than the rest of the crew. And from his other notes, I can guess this whole mission was my father's design. As you could probably guess, with the seemingly advanced technology being used here, there isn't much detail about the mission itself written on paper. And as much as I've tried, I can't seem to turn on or activate these tablet things. But I think I can come up with some theories. I've got 3 main ones at the moment. 1, this is all a dream. It's rather cliche, but the possibility is still there. 2, the term Voyage in the name isn't used literally. So instead of us going somewhere, we just used this hunk of metal to study some stuff. Or 3, the more morbid of ideas, this is some sort of space mission, and I'm floating around alone in the void. I can't help but be a pessimist in this situation. I'm either doomed or overreacting. Either way, I'm not too happy about it. In the worst case scenario, being that this is a prank or unintentional abandonment by the crew and they show back up and hear these, yeah, I looked through some of your stuff. Fuck you. Deal with it.
Hermes Voyage Log 4.
Finally, I have some actual new stuff to talk about. It's only been a couple of hours after my last log. I had climbed into my cozy corner of padding and blankets to sleep some frustration away when I heard some new beeps and boops. These beeps were different enough to wake me from my half-hearted attempt of rest. They were coming from the room next to mine. I guess I should draw that picture for you, in the best way that I can describe it well. Think of it from a top-down perspective. You have a pentagonal-shaped ship with 3 rooms in the back and 2 rooms in the front. The 2 closets are in those 2 front rooms. The room I'm assigned to, and have claimed as my current residence, is the middlemost room in the back. These beeps were coming from the room to my left, where I believe another group of researchers were assigned to. This room had far more of the advanced screens and panels in it, one of which had my new shiny beeps and boops. It was pretty strange at first, in all honesty. I had walked around that room plenty of times and never seen that panel lit up before. When I went to check what was going on, a small red light was blinking on and off. I had been hoping for something new to focus on. I'd rather focus on anything other than my own thoughts right now. When I approached the light, I saw a label that read AI message, and lucky for me, there happened to be a button right above that light. So I pressed it in hopes that I could see what the message said.
Attention. This is an automated warning from the ship's temporal synchronization system. Temporal distortion has been detected. To navigate this distortion, exercise extreme care when traversing the ship. The ship's AI will assist in identifying any more temporal anomalies to minimize the risk of unintended disruptions.
After hearing this, my confusion led to a slight sense of paranoia. I'm not dumb by any measure, but temporal, that's time stuff. Way outside my area of expertise. Well, all of this stuff is. I'm good at paperwork. Even so, I've been attempting to communicate in some way with this AI, but nothing has seemed to work yet. So, at this point, I'm stuck. I'll keep trying to figure it all out, now with an ever-increasing sense of danger. I'm starting to think that the more harmless explanations for all of this are less likely.
Hermes Voyage Log 5.
It's been a little over 2 weeks since I've last felt the need to sit here and pretend that I'm not talking to myself. But, for better or worse, I've learned quite a bit more about what's going on here. Well, at least what the mission was meant to be. Not what's so obviously gone wrong now. turns out my old man was a bit more than just a regular government scientist. He had been one of their most trusted ones. A man who commanded so much respect that he could get his supremely unqualified son into what was supposed to be his place on this mission. He knew he didn't have much time left. Would have been good to know that information myself. Maybe we could have talked more. Maybe I could have talked him out of getting me assigned to this abomination. The Hermes voyage isn't what I guessed it was. Not by a long shot. It isn't some newfangled spaceship or research lab. It's something entirely new and foreign to humanity. During my time away from recording logs, I've dug into just about everyone's personal belongings, and eventually, I got one of the tablet-looking devices to work. It was Dr. Isaac Hankins' device that I got access to first. And so far, I think it'll be the only device I need. Dr. Hankins knew the most about the history and purpose of this mission, second only to my father. They had been partners in their research. So, long story short, an unidentified flying object landed somewhere in southeastern Montana, and the United States government built an entire facility around the crash site soon after finding it. My father was chosen to lead the initial research into the foreign object. It was my father who discovered its extraterrestrial origin and its extraterrestrial occupants. He, along with Dr. Hankins, studied the beings and the ship they had crashed here. They discovered that more than half of the elements used in the creation of this ship and the beings themselves were unknown to science. This had all happened about 6 years ago, which explains a rather hostile time period between me and my father. We had lived in Virginia my whole life up until 6 years ago. I was still in college when he called me, saying that we were selling the old family home and moving to some town in the middle of fucking nowhere. I knew it was for work, but I couldn't help but resent his decision. I still do to this day. That house was the last thing tying us to my mother. She had passed from pancreatic cancer after I had just turned 4. I only have fleeting memories and a handful of pictures of the woman. I was always told that she was such a wonderful person and a great mother. And so, my father's decision to sell the house and move far away struck me as a cowardly attempt to distance himself. I can now see that I was both completely wrong and exactly right. I must admit many of the details are far above my head, but from the few notes and records I found on Isaac's tablet, I can paint a simplistic picture of it all. My dad and his research team poked around some kind of alien spaceship and found a small cylindrical device, no bigger than your average fire extinguisher. This little thing turned out to be more important than anything else they found, which, in my opinion, doesn't make any sense. They had fully intact alien bodies just sitting there, seemingly intelligent life just collecting dust while they focused on some tube. But I'm not a scientist for a reason. Somehow, over the course of years, they found out what the tube's purpose was. It was the engine. Well, it took place of an engine. This thing that you could carry around with one hand had the capability of moving a ship that seemingly weighed multiple tons. I haven't found anything explaining how it works in Isaac's notes, but there were some unfinished theories. I don't remember them all. One stood out, though. Most likely because it was written by my father. He was never the type to believe in sci-fi bullshit, as he would call it. But his theory was just that. Some sci-fi bullshit. Wormholes, black holes, white holes, a lot of holes. He proposed that inside the tube could be any combination of the various holes, and that would somehow, I don't know, teleport? Warp? Something that is not possible. The theory didn't stick out because I thought it made sense. It was just out of character for my dad. Other than some smaller stuff that honestly does not seem to matter, I figured out that I'm standing in a ship made primarily of alien material with a device that has no explanation. After reading through the notes, I took a walk through the ship looking for the thing, and I still haven't found it, which worries me. At this point, I don't blame the rest of the crew if they up and left. I wouldn't want to be here knowing about all of this. But now, I am. I wish I had minded my own business and waited like I was told to do. I think that's what I'll do now. So, I guess this is goodbye. Maybe for now, or maybe forever.